Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk personality disorders. Now I know we've talked about a few in the past, some of the more common ones like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. But those are the ones that most people have heard of or have at least seen reference to in day-to-day life. But there are actually 9 personality disorders. And so I want to start with some of the lesser known personality disorders, just explaining what they are and what they look like for people who suffer with them. So I'm going to start with paranoid personality disorder. Now this particular disorder or particular way of being results in a person being very suspicious of everybody around them. So they have a general feeling of mistrust, a general belief that those around them are out to get them somehow, or have ulterior motives, or want to cause them harm. And they interpret everything in their world through this type of a lens. So for example, a person who is working with their colleagues and one day maybe seems a little down or a little sad, and someone comes over and remarks on it, as you might with someone who you are friends with, or someone who you're a co-worker with, and you just want to check in and see how they're doing. And so you walk up and you say, hey, you look a little sad today. Is there anything I can do to help? Now, most of us would think, oh, that's sweet. They're noticing me, and I appreciate the sentiment, even though maybe they can't help. Now, someone with paranoid personality disorder is going to think, now I wonder why they're asking me that. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to get? What information do they want that they can use against me? Because that must be what they're trying to do. Are they trying to find out that I'm feeling sad today so they can tell the boss I don't like my job and get me fired? Are they trying to tell everybody that I have a problem and that, I can't control my emotions? Or are they trying to convince everyone that I'm a bad employee because, I'm not talking to everybody and giving them all my information? And there's this general underlying feeling that nothing is done with good intention, and everything is done with the intention to cause problems for the person. Now, we do know there's these people with this disorder very often carry grudges quite intensely and for a long period of time. So we know from studies done that a lot of people who were spree killers tend to qualify for a possible paranoid personality disorder diagnosis, because they will develop a grudge based on their suspiciousness and perhaps their misinterpretation of a situation, and then they hold on to that grudge, and it eats at them and eats at them and eats at them until eventually they take some kind of an action to make everybody pay for making their life miserable and for creating all of these problems for them. And then they tend to end their own lives as well, because they're convinced that everybody's against them, and they're gonna make everyone hurt as much as they've hurt. They've felt everyone has made them hurt. And so we often see this type of thinking at the root of those sorts of actions. Now, you might be thinking, well, paranoid personality disorder, I've heard of paranoid delusions, paranoia. Is it the same thing? Because it sounds like it might be the same thing. And in reality, it's not. So paranoid personality disorder, they engage in life from a view of being suspicious of everyone. So they feel like everyone could have an ulterior motive. Everyone could be plotting against them, and likely are. But they don't have fixed beliefs that remain regardless of the evidence, which is more typical of paranoid delusions. So someone with paranoid delusions might believe that the government has implanted a chip into their brain, and they're tracking them to gather all of their thoughts, and they want to brainwash them and turn them into a soldier or something. So there's a lot of very specific information, and it's turned into this very specific type of story. And so someone with paranoid delusions, you might show them a scan of their head, or an x-ray of their head, and they'll see that there's no chip implanted in their brain, but they will be determined that no, it's there. It doesn't matter what you show them or how you show them. They're determined it's there. They might find like, a little fleck on the x-ray because, maybe the x-ray isn't as clear as it could be, or a little bit of distortion, and be like, oh no, that's it. Even if you know as an expert that's not what it is. And so a paranoid delusion is much more specific. Now, someone with paranoid personality disorder, they may have a general suspiciousness of the government. So, the government's up to no good. Every time the government asks me for information, or wants me to take a vaccine, or is demanding that I pay my taxes, I start thinking, I wonder why they want me to do that. They've got to have an ulterior motive. I wonder what it is. And it can be very logically reasoned out based on their own feelings. So, well, the government wants me to pay taxes because they want to keep me poor. That must be what it is. Now, were you to show the person evidence that disproved something they were believing was the goal of someone else's actions, then they are able to accept that, okay, that proves that this isn't the case, but that just means I got my reasoning wrong. It doesn't mean they're not up to something. It's just that what I thought they were up to wasn't actually what they were up to. So there's more malleability to the thought process, and it's more based in an experience of reality. And so when you're seeing people who you encounter that approach everything with suspicion and treat you like you're out to get them, even if you're trying to be the nicest person in the world, it may be that you have met someone who has a paranoid personality disorder. And it's really important that you approach them with understanding, and you recognize what is behind their suspiciousness, and what is behind the grudges that they're holding, and what is behind their reasoning, and that it's not you as a person. They don't have anything against you in particular. You're not sending a message that you're not trustworthy. You're not doing anything wrong. It's their general perception of the world. So hopefully that is something that's helpful for some people out there, or you find it, just overall interesting. So for the next little bit, I'm going to work through probably the 6 personality disorders we don't hear about very often, and just give you some basic information on those. And next video, we'll look at avoidant personality disorder. So I hope that things are going well for you, and I will see you again soon. Bye.